Welcome back to the newest episode of All the Glitters. I'm your host, Kalen Hurley. Let's start this show. All right, so Stanley Cup's been awarded. The partying has started in South Florida. The Elbow Room has gotten some love again once more from the Panthers. The 11 Club last night seemed to be bumping. If you follow NHL Twitter or anything social media related, you're going to see Brad Marchand in a cowboy hat, crowd surfing with the cup, Sam Bennett saying he isn't effing leaving with a graphic that said 8 more years in the background. Sasha Barkov may be the drunkest man alive, knocking on his neighbor's doors with the cup. And then Sam Reinhart, just an absolute love fest over his entire team. It's pretty sweet to watch. I mean, you do it once, it was probably you do it once, it looked like even when Vegas won, it looked fun, but to do it back to back, I could just assume the partying is just amplified. So, you know what? Good on them. They deserve it, and get it out of the system now. It's going to be hard to go back to back to back, and even harder to know that if they did, that would be their 4th Stanley Cup final in a row, which would be, that's when we're really actually talking about a dynasty. If we're starting to make it that many years in a row and we're starting to win that much, but we'll see how this all pans out. Some little bit of NHL news around the league. Jonathan Toews can't officially sign till July 1, but seems like him and Winnipeg have worked on a deal. Very bonus laden deal. So I think against the cap, it's $2 million, and then just bonuses on top of bonuses on top of bonuses for, 30, 40, 50, 60 games played. Another bonus if it's 50 games plus the playoffs appearance. Certain amount of X amount if they win the cup, it's another bonus, things like that. So he stands to make, I think, just under or right at $6 million if, say, Winnipeg win all the way and Toews played 60 plus games. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's. I don't necessarily wouldn't say he retired in his prime, but he had some illnesses and some things like that he needed to step away from the game for a little bit, and took him a better part of a year to deem himself ready to get back on the ice. So it's cool. And hometown boy gets to go play for his hometown team. So there it is. That'd be pretty sweet. I mean, storybook at least. Other than that, small signings right now. Dallas has made some. Gus Nyquist and Ray Bourque got signed today. Trent Fredericks was like 8x4 for Edmonton. Nothing much around the league. It's pretty quiet, cautious. I think everyone's being. There's a lot of handshake deals behind the scenes going on. But I think next week with the draft coming and, a couple days after that free agency, we're about to get buzzing like we haven't been in a long time. So very, very excited with that. Nothing but speculations on the VGK front. Elliot Friedman talked again about Petro not being ready for the start of the season and whether or not that's going to extend for long term. Is he ever going to be ready to play again at that level? And, for someone like Pietrangelo, who has won cups, who was a former captain, who eats a ton of minutes, prides himself on how elite his game is, if he feels like he can't perform at that level or even anywhere near being helpful to a team, will he step back on the ice? We don't know. I think an 80% Alex Pietrangelo is better than a lot of the defensemen in the league. Does Alex Pietrangelo feel the same way? We'll find out. That being said, yes, it's a lot of fun to throw his $8.8 million in the cap situation for Vegas, but that leaves a gaping hole on the back end. He has been, since he came on, the biggest minutes eater on our defense. He is the staple of our defense. People like to shit on Alex Pietrangelo a lot, which is crazy. He is an elite defenseman. Every NHL team would not have him on their team. Is his offensive game where it used to be 4 years ago? No. Has he taken a step back in some of maybe his physical play and how hard he battles? Maybe a little bit. He's still getting in front of these shots. He's still, when he is on the ice, giving it his all. He's still that guy who has potential to get his wires crossed and engage in some nonsense and buffoonery after the whistles. But I think that it wouldn't be, let's say this. He's a young man, but as far as NHL terms, he is an old man. So I don't think it's controversial to say his best years might be behind him. That doesn't mean he doesn't offer things to an NHL team as far as his gameplay. So, in a perfect world, he's healthy and he plays. In a not so perfect world, we use his cap to help Vegas's depth and maybe a bigger name forward in free agency. But we do need to address Caden Korczak is not going to step foot in place of Alex Pietrangelo. That's not going to happen. That being said, just because Alex is down doesn't mean, if the plan was to move on from Nick Hague, doesn't mean all of a sudden Nick Hague just gets, re-signed and all that either. And I would be lying if I said, if you just, okay, Alex is down, we re-sign Hague and we bring up Caden Korczak, those two players in themselves aren't going to fill the hole that Alex Pietrangelo leaves behind. So we are going to need our current signed defense to step their game up, to play as if Alex is speaking into that locker room every day, because he is one of the big leaders in the locker room and he is one of the vocal leaders, especially with the defense. For a long time, Vegas has had a certain standard on the back end set, and he was part of the mainstays of that standard. So when we're talking about replacing him, I don't know if you can replace Alex Pietrangelo. You could try to find someone NHL ready, young, and who can eat up minutes and play responsible. But what he brings to the table, there's a lot of things, intangibles that he possesses, that make him him. It was a reason he was a very highly sought after free agent when we got him. So we'll find out what happens there. There's some defensemen out there that are worth checking out. That being said, the ones that are, Bowen Byram's getting a lot of attention. That's not an answer for Vegas either. So we'll see what happens. I am not going to make this an I told you so or gotcha moment, but about a month ago when I started putting out these first episodes, and right when Vegas got eliminated from the postseason, I said there's, a name that not a lot of people are talking about that has kind of seen some different teams over the last couple of years, in Tanner Jeannot. And, there's some articles popping up with some Vegas media saying like, oh, Tanner Jeannot, this, that, and they probably have had him on this radar as well. I just want to say that I was one of those people who was banging the drum. I think he provides some grit or some sandpaper, however you want to say. I call him a prick. I think that is a term of endearment with his game. He's got that nasty edge. He's young enough that he can take steps and elevate his game. I don't think you've seen his offensive upside ceiling yet. But I'm also not saying he's going to be a 25, 30 goal scorer. I think what his game brings Vegas is energy. It brings physicality. And with those things, and youth, with youth comes speed, hopefully. I say hopefully because, Pavel Dorofeyev isn't wowing anybody with how fast he is. It just is what it is. He's not a crazy fast guy. He's got an elite level shot, and He is not afraid to use it. That's kind of where his game makes him valuable. Whereas Tanner Jeannot, and I'm not super familiar with his game as far as the speed aspect of it, but he's young, he's physical, he's got that mean streak in him. He will finish his checks. What that does for Vegas is it creates space. It creates openings for our bigger players, your Jacks, your Carlsons. If Jeannot got picked up, it would be a middle to bottom six role. I think maybe you could probably move him up and down the lineup as needed with injuries and things. But I think a third line role on the side of Carlson, say we don't go after Riley Smith, which I do think we are going to try to make some sort of deal with him. And maybe Jeannot plays in that sod role on the side of Hurdle and Dorofeev. We'll find out how these lines shake out, especially if we go big game hunting and say we do nab Marner. If we not have to put Petro on LTIR, I mean, if we do end up putting him on LTIR, then we might not have to get rid of Barbashev. And to have a Jeannot and a Barbashev on your team would be it would do a lot of things for the forwards that like having the puck on their stick. All of a sudden Nick Waugh is able to create some more time and space with his feet and his puck possession rather than having to battle along the wall and, cut this way, cut that way, fake one way, go the other, and, which he's very good at doing so. I think that someone like Barbashev or Jeannot on the one side of Eichel, especially if we're going to get a Marner, wouldn't be a horrible idea. You get someone who's going to, hit you. And that might give that extra little bit of space for Jack to make some moves and plays. And he likes having that puck on his stick, and he likes being the captain of that offense, and everything runs through him. That's how he likes it. So if you don't have that physical presence, you're able to swarm and kind of control those puck possessors. And, that's where things can get stifled and where we feel like we can't breathe out there. And I think, a team like Edmonton in the playoffs exposed that. So I'm all for it. I think it's great. I think he's projected to make like $1.5 million experiment with the cap going up the way it was gone up from last year to this year is like a $1 million or a 925 guy. And if he's going to be playing in your bottom six and can get elevated up and down the lineup, I think having a cheap Swiss Army knife isn't the worst idea in the world. I mean, I think one of Vegas's biggest problems is, we're not the oldest team in the league. But we're one of the slowest. We are up there in age. And, if you're slow and old, it doesn't matter how heavy you are. You got to get to the person to lean on them. You got to get to these skaters with the puck before you're able to utilize physicality and size. So I'd like to see Vegas go after someone like Jeannot. I think, and he's going to be the perfect misfit, right? Like, through all the years, and we're coming up on year 9, through all of that, we've had different sort of identities, but the real identity was the Misfits. Yeah, he won't be an original one, but he is a castaway. He was, Tampa threw the moon and the sun and the stars at the guy or at Nashville to get him and acquire him, and turned around, flipped him over and sent him on his way the next year. Then he's with LA, and it just didn't seem like it was clicking. And now he's ready for market, and he's going to test that theory. And I think he's willing to bet on himself. And I think Vegas is a perfect spot for him. 1 to 3 year deal at 1.5. Let him prove his worth. And if he does, we can give him something a little bit longer and more expensive when the time's right. And if it doesn't, you cut ties, and no one's worse for wear, hopefully. Look at the guys we brought on this last year. We brought on Saad right before the deadline. He was waived by St. Louis. That turned out to be fine. He was fine. Pearson came over on a PTO. We gave him league minimum. He was great. I mean, for not paying someone a ton of money and him coming over on a paid tryout, like, what else do you want from the guy? He was totally worth it. And then you got, Riley Smith at the deadline. He's been here before, so he knows how that works. Victor Olofsson, before he got hurt, I don't know if you remember, but like before he got hurt, he was rolling. It was a lot of power play stuff, and our biggest. I think some of these goal totals were a little inflated. I think Dorofeyev doesn't score 35 goals a year right then, or start that trend if our power play wasn't great. I mean, he's a goal scorer, so he's going to score 20, 25, but that could be a little bit inflated because of his role on the power play. Tomas Hertl, right in that bumper spot, that was perfect for him. So we'll see what happens. I think that, I think Hertl takes another step. I think Doro does take another step this next year. They had that chemistry. Now they get a whole year to train in the offseason together, and Bruce has time to tinker. He's a big tinkerer. I think they came out with the lines. It was like however many different line combinations used this year was like a league, or not a league, but a team setting record. So that's pretty funny. He's not afraid to get the blender out and go to town. So I'm just excited to get all this hearsay and this like what it will they won't they kind of deal done. I just want to see what happens. I do think though, Tanner Jeannot, I'm all on board. Pay the man 1.5. Let's dance. Let's do it. We've paid worse players more money, so why not try this? Marner's camp is kind of flirting with the idea of shorter term, 3-4 years. I don't hate that, especially if we're going to throw a ton of money at him. You don't want to be locked up forever. I mean, unfortunately, I hate to beat a dead horse this episode, but Alex Pietrangelo got 8.8, and at the time you're like, okay, 8.8, where the cap is now. When he's done, he's going to be 37, 38 years old. Like, that's not a good contract. This is an albatross of a contract. We do not want to be on the hook for this contract. And so we'll see how it plays out. But, that's another crazy thing is the CBA, they're talking about making 7 years the max. And if you don't have the rights to the player, 6 years being the max. I think that's coming from the players. Quite obviously, if the cap's going to keep going up, they don't want to have to be stuck. Look, I think Trent Frederick's contract might be a prime example. It was rumored, I don't know if it's official, but he's signed 8 years, $4 million per. It's like, he's going to be a third-line center making $4 million. Like, that's the best deal in the world for Edmonton. What are we doing? I mean, sign that all day, especially since you're paying Darnell Nurse $9.5 million. I still can't get over it. I will say it every episode. Every episode he's not bought out or traded or something. He cannot make $9.5 million. He makes more money than Cale Makar. He makes more money than Roman Josi. He is so much worse than both of those players. It is mind-boggling how he got that contract. And McDavid's post-game interview sounded pissy, or like not pissy, but he was pissed off. He was upset. His locker clean-out was not as vague as people are thinking. People are like, oh, he didn't really say much. He said, if this happens and this happens, he said winning is the most important thing. He said he has to make sure that what his plan is going to be best for him and his family. And he said that re-signing will not be an issue if he was basically said, if I know we have a plan to win and win a lot. And it's not just winning games, it's winning a cup. It's why Dan Marino isn't considered one of the greatest of all time. Even though he is statistically one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, he never won a Super Bowl. And if all you're judging things off of championships. If Connor never wins a championship, he cannot be considered the greatest of all time. I do believe he is the greatest hockey player to ever touch ice. If he doesn't win a championship based off most of your guys' definitions, then he's worthless, right? So by definition, a guy like Paul Cotter is better than Connor McDavid. He has a cup. Connor doesn't. Connor will do what he needs to do to get his name engraved on that cup, and he should. And if that means signing another 2 or 3 years in Edmonton and bouncing if they don't go, you should, dude. You should be out the door so fast, their head spins. And that's it. Listen, I want him to win. I've said this a ton of times in this podcast. Not with Edmonton. Not while they're paying Darnell Nurse $9.5 million. Not while they're continuing to give contracts out to these, like, Edmonton is the place you go when, like, you've done something horribly dumb in your career and they're like, you know what? We'll give him a second chance. Corey Perry, you've lost 5 out of the last 6 Stanley Cups, and you did something crazy at a Christmas party and got way too drunk and did something, and, like, there was news there was, like, president's wife and an affair this way, and then there was news that it was this and there was that, and you know what? Edmonton, we got you. Come on, Corey. Come be one of our staples of our offense. Evander Kane, you have some serious, like, domestic violence allegations. Yep. And you owe casinos millions of dollars, and you broke when the league was paused, and then you still did. Come on. Edmonton wants you. Let's go. How'd that pan out? Perry and Kane are less problematic than paying Darnell Nurse $9.5 million. Ugh, God, it's horrific. It's crazy. I know timing means a lot too when they sign these contracts, but that's bad. So bad. Evan Bouchard is defensively either a Norris caliber defenseman or unplayable. He's either a high performing offense, he's either a forward or he's a Norris caliber defenseman, and there's no in between. In between is this area where he is, like, should not be touching the ice surface, and he's not going to get paid because Darnell Nurse is getting $9.5 million. I can't, it's baffling. He's the 3rd highest paid person in Edmonton. You're spending less than $5 million on your horrendous goaltending. And if Stan Bowman doesn't call Anaheim 2 days ago, yesterday, today, tomorrow, the next day, until John Gibson is an Edmonton Oiler and can give his other starts to Stuart Skinner, you have got to be kicked out of your, like, bye. If you can't, you pick up the phone. They literally said they'll retain on him. That's nuts. So figure out what you got to figure out cap-wise. Get him or Connor's out. That was his warning shot. That was what that whole press conference was about. That was an indirect but very direct message to Chris Knobloch, Stan Bowman. Get me what I want now or next year or 2 years from now. I am out of here, and I am going to make your life hell. And there's rumors. There was a rumor yesterday, today. I can't remember when, but they were like, "Oh, he'll be a Tampa Bay Lightning." Could you imagine? Gensel and Kucherov, Connor McDavid, Braden Point is your second line center. What? That'd be nuts. Yeah, until things are set in stone, it's all hearsay. It's crazy. Yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. So, listen, if you, I'm not a, the software I use for the podcast and editing, it kind of determines clips itself. So, if you listen to the clips of this podcast on TikTok, um, I know these are 20 to 30 minutes. Give this a shot, the long form. I know sometimes I go off on tangents, but I do finish a lot more of my thoughts on this version of everything than I do in the TikTok space. And I will make a separate video that I just upload to TikTok and just kind of describes that. But I think a lot of nuance and a lot of thoughtfulness with some of the clips gets lost because it seems like it's a 20 to 50-second clip of me saying one thing, but I've spoke for 25 plus minutes. So in a lot of times I will Quentin Tarantino these podcasts where I'll start something, go off on a tangent, and come back to it in the end. And it may not be the best form, but it's right now it's just because it's me and you guys. And very soon, next week, at some point, I'm gonna have a co-host. It might not be in the garage. It might not be I don't know which side he'll sit on. I spent a lot of money on tattoos, so maybe I'll go to this side. This could be my good side. It's my most expensive side. Where is it here? I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. But as always, thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for your ears and listening today. If you liked anything I had to say, please like this video. If you liked it a lot, you should subscribe to YouTube. I am 10 subscribers away from 100. That's like a big deal. And I would love to have my first 100 subscribers. I would like somebody who is not a subscriber and listening to this to do that. That'd be sweet. I'm going to continue to ask my Instagram, my personal Instagram, my podcast Instagram, the Twitter, the TikTok. I'm going to continue to ask for friends because if you don't ask, you'll never receive. And I think somewhere in the Bible, they said, if you ask, you should receive. If you ask, you then shall receive or something. I think that is around a direct quote. But yeah, that's, I would really, really appreciate that to grow this channel, grow the community, and get as many people listening to my crazy thoughts on this awesome, loved game of hockey. I think it's the best game to watch. I really do. And I grew up a football fan as my number one sport. Now I hardly watch it. Quickly, this is my Quentin Tarantino moment. I just had a remember light bulb. I want to move the league to 6 months. Started in October. I think it was October, November, December, January, February, March. 12 games, each team. 6 games, 12 months. That's 72 games, so it's 10 less games, easier on the body. You're no back-to-backs at that point. You don't have to do them. You still have the 2-week break. That's fine. You can still do, break for the trade deadline and in the All-Star game or whatever. If it's another 4 nations, if it's Olympic year, if it's whatever. Still do your break. You're finishing in March, early April. You could get most of this done. I mean, you're finishing in March, excuse me. You can get most of the playoffs done. You can get the Stanley Cup awarded by June. It could have been like early June, late May. I think the NHL lost a ton of viewership with the Stanley Cup final. They're throwing like extra days in between games. They're losing all this momentum. We knew who was going to play by the 29th. It took 3 weeks to get 6 games done. That's nuts. So that was my proposal. 6 months, starting October 1st. You play through, October, November, December, January, February, March. You start playoffs April 1st or whatever, April, the second week of April. Play April, May. Done. And we all live our lives. Not going to happen because NHL makes too much money, but it should happen because I thought it in my brain and I have a microphone in my hand. I'm talking to a camera. So what I say goes. So boom. Put that in the next CBA and watch the NHL product just go. And we'll still make the same amount of money and all of our players will be healthy and the product will be so much better. I fixed that. Tune in next time for World Hunger because I'm going to fix that too. Anyway, thank you for your ears. Thank you for your time. Like, share, subscribe, do all of the things. Besos, mi amigos. And as always, go Knights.